Hello again. So this is part 2 for our equations conversation because now you're going to solve equations for the unknown. Cue Elsa music. Okay, so I'm going to give you an x on this side, right? And in order for it to be balanced, it would have to be x equals x. And x could be any number, 10, -8, 4, 1.5, whatever you want. But first we're going to start with x plus 3 on this side and 9 on the other side. So if my equation is x plus 3 equals 9, I am solving for the unknown, the variable. I need to get the variable by itself, and we call that isolating the variable. So in order to get x by itself, we need to eliminate this plus 3. Now, how can I get it off of my scale? Well, I can't just erase it. This is a positive 3. In order to take away or to get rid of a plus 3, you have to do the inverse. I want you to write that word down. The inverse operation. That's super important to know for equations, inverse operations. So if I have a plus 3 and I want to get rid of it, right? I can't really do that. If I have a plus 3, I'm going to minus 3 because what's 3 minus 3? 0. But again, remember, whatever I do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm also going to minus 3 on the other side of the equal sign. So what is left? On this side, I'm just left with my x. And on the right side, what is 9 minus 3? 6. So to solve that equation, x plus 3 equals 9, I'm subtracting 3 from both sides. I get x equals 6. And you can check it by plugging it in or substituting. What's 6 plus 3? 9. Ding, ding, ding. We did it correctly. Let's try another one. If I have 4x, 4 times x, equals 16. Okay? 4x equals 16. You want to do the inverse operation. Okay, I have 4 x's. 4 times x equals 16. So what is the opposite of multiplication? Divide. I'm going to divide this by 4. Because what's 4 divided by 4? 1x. 4x divided by 4. Okay, now over here, I did this division symbol. We're going to stay away from that symbol. We don't use that anymore in algebra and solving equations. We use the fraction bar, divide by 4. Okay? Some of you, I know I'm still going to see this, but you want to stay away from it. If I divide this side by 4 to get my 1x, what do I have to do to the other side? Divide by 4. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. And again, to check it, we can plug it in. Substitute. What's 4 times our answer? 16. All right, let's try another one. If I have x minus 9 is equal to 20. X minus 9 equals 20. Okay, so I have a negative 9 here, a minus 9. And remember, what do I have to do to eliminate it, to isolate my unknown? I'm going to do the opposite. What's the opposite of minus 9? Positive 9. If I add 9 to this side, I have to add 9 to the other side. So a minus 9 and a plus 9, that's 0. So I'm left with x equals, and what's 20 plus 9? 29. The last one I'm going to show you on my little board is x divided by 3 and 15. So again, I am not using this sign to show division. I have x divided by 3. Some number divided by 3 is equal to 15. Think about that for a second. What number do you know divided by 3 is equal to 15? Well, this is division. So again, you do the inverse. What's the opposite of divide? Multiply. If I divide by 3, the opposite is to multiply by 3. So if I multiply this side by 3, I have to multiply this side by 3. Okay? So what is a fraction times a whole number? Well, if I put a 1 underneath, I get 3x over 3. And what is 3x divided by 3? 1x, which is what we want, that unknown. 1x equals, what's 15 times 3? 45. And we can check our answer by substituting it back in. If we go back to our original equation, and I input a 45 here, what's 45 divided by 3? Is that equal to 15? Yes, it is. Okay, so I'm going to switch screens for a second and show you the notes I would like you to write down. So I'm going to minimize this. Oh, there it is, into the unknown. So I would like you to pause your screen and write this down either in your notebook or on a sheet of paper where you're keeping all of your notes nice and organized. The title is Solving Equations, and then the definition. An equation is a mathematical sentence that uses an equal sign to show that two expressions are equal. Well, here's expressions. Here are equations. Equations have equal signs. The solution is the answer that makes the equation true. This is when we solved for x. And remember, inverse operations. So if you need to pause the video at this point to copy this down, do it. Here's our first example that we're going to do on the in this Smart Notebook. I have a picture of a scale. I have x and 6, and then on the other side I have 9. So my equation would be x plus 6 equals 9. Remember to do the inverse on both sides. How do I eliminate this positive 6? I minus 6. If I minus 6 on the left, I have to minus 6 on the right. And you are left with x is equal to 3. Can x be any other number? What if x was 4? Would that make this equation true? No. The only number you can plug in right here for x is 3. Now, something I want to talk about, but I can't really stress because I'm not seeing you in person and I'm not there to stare at your notes that's in front of you. But all of these steps you have to show on the paper. You might be able to look at this equation and know that the answer is 3, right? 3 plus 6 equals 9. This one is easy. But down the road, you're going to do much harder and more complex and equations with decimals and fractions, and you need to show your work. I cannot stress it enough. So you need to show me what you're doing to both sides of the equation, always. So everything you see right here, this is what needs to be written down. Let's try another one. Oh, I don't want to go to this one just yet. Okay, so I have 2 x's on the left and 12 cubes on the right. So my equation is 2x equals 12. And remember, 2 and an x right next to it, 2 is the coefficient, is 2 times x. So this is times x. What is the inverse operation? Divide. You have to divide both sides by 2. Here I have a little picture. This is what happens if you only divide one side by 2. Look, I divided my x's by 2, but not the other side, so it's not balanced. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Again, use the fraction bar. That means divide. So what does x equal? 6. The third example, I have some number divided by 4 is equal to 20. This is division. And what is the opposite of divide by 4? Multiply by 4. Okay, so I'm going to do the inverse operation, and I'm going to show multiplication on both sides by using the dot. Okay, don't use this anymore to show multiplication because I already have an x symbol there and you don't want to get confused. So if I multiply this side by 4, I have to multiply this side by 4. So what's 20 times 4? X is equal to 80. And again, you can always check your answer. You don't have to ask, is this right? Did I do it right? This is the best part about solving equations is your answer is right in front of you if you check your work. If I substitute my answer in right here, what's 80 divided by 4? 20. I did it correctly. Okay, let's go back to this one that I skipped. So here I have 6 on the left and x minus 3 on the right. So if I were to write the equation, it would look like this. Sometimes your variable can be on the right side of the equal sign. That's okay, it doesn't matter. So I have a minus 3 over here, a negative 3. What's the opposite of minus 3? The inverse of negative 3 is to add 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And remember, this is the showing of the work. This is what we need to see. So minus 3 and a plus 3, that's gone. And I'm left with x is equal to, what is 6 plus 3? 9. Now notice here in my answer, the variable is on the right side. That's okay. X equals 9 is the same thing as 9 equals x. It doesn't matter how you write them. It's still the same. The last one I want to do is to solve this equation. So now that you're understanding the basics and you're like, okay, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, and I have to do the inverse. Now you have a fraction problem. And we tend to freak out when we see fractions, but honestly, the rules are still the same. You just need to remember decimal operations and fraction operations. So I have x plus 1/10 is equal to 3/10. Now this one's nice and simple for you. The denominators are the same. You might know what fraction already goes here. You might already know what x equals and you're ready to roll. But remember, you have to show your work. So in order to do this, we need to know, okay, I have a plus 1/10 because I am isolating this variable. What's the opposite of plus 1/10? Minus 1/10. Show your work. If I minus 1/10 on the left side of the equal sign, I have to do it on the other side. Minus 1/10. So I'm left with x, right? These guys cancel out. Equals, and what is 3/10 minus 1/10? 2/10. Am I done here? No, remember, we can simplify 2/10 again. What is a factor of both 2 and 10? 2. So this simplifies to 1/5. So I'm going to move this down and rewrite my final answer. X equals 1/5. Again, you might have known that a 2/10 goes right here from the beginning. But if you do not show your work, you will not get credit. My favorite saying, no work, no credit. Okay, so I want you to practice solving one-step equations. I have 12 examples here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. What I want you to do is pause the video, copy down all 12 problems, and then solve them. Show me work on both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other on the other side of the equal sign. And you have to do the inverse operation. What's the inverse of plus 7? Minus 7. So pause the video and do these 12 problems. When you come back on, I will show you the solutions and you can check to make sure that you are correct. Okay, here are the answers that you should have got for all 12 problems. This one, you should have minus 7 from both sides. This one, number 2, you should have minus 9 from both sides. Number 3, the opposite of minus 4 is plus 4 on both sides. Number 4 is 3 times p, so you divide both sides by 3. Number 5 is 8 times t, so you divide both sides by 8. Number 6 is 1/4 of v. This is divide by 4. What's the opposite of divide by 4? Multiply by 4. Number 7 is plus 12, so you do the opposite, the inverse, which is minus 12 on both sides. Number 8, you should have done the opposite of minus 8, which is plus 8. Number 9, you do the opposite of minus 1, which is plus 1. Number 10 is 5 times j, so you do the opposite and divide by 5. Number 11 is 9 times m, so you do the opposite and divide by 9. And number 12 is divide by 6, so the inverse is multiply both sides by 6.